I will sequel franchise spin-off. Putain de connard d'enculé de ta mère, elle est belle ta...
We should go.
It's the Popcorn Digest with Gareth and Andy. It's the Popcorn Digest.
Hello and welcome to Popcorn Digest, the podcast about the films you love and some you don't. I'm your host, Agent Green, and joining me as always is full-time co-host and part-time program, Agent Raphael.
Whoa, I'm a program.
And for our latest episode, we're plugging into The Matrix Resurrections, a sequel that bears more in common with Gremlins 2 than it does any other film in the Matrix series. But is this a worthwhile meta take on the blockbuster legacy sequel, or does this meta idea take us up inside its own arsehole?
We can't see it, but we're all trapped inside these strange repeating loops.
Billions of people just living out their lives, oblivious.
But this is the moment for you to show us what is real.
Hey you! Remember those Matrix sequels that we universally hated? Well, how about another one? And remember the few things that you loved about those films? Yeah, we're not doing that anymore. Somehow The Matrix has returned, and it has brought a whole host of fan-favourite characters with it, such as Neo, but sad, Trinity, but sad also, Agent Smith, but sexy and gay, Morpheus, but I don't know what's going on, and Niobe, but wearing a wig and please don't hit me, Will Smith. So, somehow The Matrix has returned, Andy, and you have now finally seen it.
Yep.
What did you think?
It's oh god. The end.
Roll credits.
Roll credits.
Join us next time.
Oh, it's a weird one because
Would you call it an odd duck?
yeah, definitely an odd duck. I mean, there's things about it that didn't work for me at all, and a lot of those things were on a technical level.
Yeah.
But some of it did work for me, where I felt like there was a bit more focus and restraint than the prior sequels.
I think I know where you're coming from with that.
Just from like a basic storytelling, screenplay, use of characters level.
Yeah.
Because I remember we talked about that a lot when we discussed the other two sequels, especially how they handled Neo.
Yeah.
Because of where they put him at the end of the first film.
Yes, yeah.
And them struggling. So there were things about that, but yeah, just a really odd duck of a film. It kind of gave me the sense that it was a creator of a property deliberately sabotaging their own work to ensure that no one else picked it up.
Oh, it 100% feels that way. I think that is even enforced by Lana Wachowski coming out just prior to the film being released. And in the premiere,
Yeah.
she was asked, would you make another one? Is this a setup for a trilogy? And she was like, oh God, no. This is it. It does feel like it's a not just closing of the book. It feels like it's stamping it closed.
Yeah,
You know?
yeah. It's a strange one because we're about a year removed from the film coming out.
Yes.
Considering what I've read about and the reception and the box office, which we'll go into much, much later,
Yeah.
I kind of felt like the reaction to it maybe was a little bit on the harsh side.
Yeah.
Considering what, the kind of shit we get these days.
Yeah, yeah.
Anyway, but at the same time, because of how it angles itself, it's constantly showing you the other thing that we had previously and comparing it to what we have now. And it's almost like a comment on almost like it's like a deliberate comment on cinema.
Yes.
As to where we are now, even like down to how they made it. So yeah, it's one of those films that I kind of would consider is quite an interesting film in regards to how it examines itself and how and how it sabotages itself in some way. It's a real odd one.
It
really
is. It is. I mean, you know what? To be honest, going into this episode, we've been speaking beforehand.
Yeah.
And this is actually the first episode in like 5 years that we're doing face to face.
Yeah, we're holding hands right now.
Finally. And we were speaking beforehand, and I said to you, I thought we were going to be like diametrically opposed when it came to this film. just in terms of gut reaction. But it seems like we're actually on a very similar wavelength once more.
Yeah.
Because I'm definitely of the same opinion. However, I did watch this film when it first came out. I know that you mentioned you haven't. I watched it the first day it came out. Did I go cinema? Did I fuck? And I think that was part of the issue with this one, is nobody went. But I did find it, the initial viewing of it, although I was positive towards it, I did find it quite jarring in relation to the previous films, as I had just gone through a rewatch and then watched The Matrix Resurrections. And it's, for all intents and purposes, a completely different film, stylistically, in terms of the writing, where the characters are, what it does with those characters. I've actually gone on to watch it for this episode. I'd already watched it this year. I'd watched it like the first week in January, so I watched it again for the episode. And this is actually like the fourth time I've seen it.
Yeah.
And it's weird. I had many of the same complaints that you just mentioned, just in terms of like the technical side of things.
Yeah.
But that's kind of like faded away for me, and it's just become far more interesting in terms of the depth and what it's saying, like in terms of its comments on cinema, what it's saying about like it feels like, especially in this day and age where what's happening, we look at what's happening with Warner Brothers now, the very studio that made the film, and it feels like it's like the end of an era, but also a portent of things to come. The whole comment on the Legacy sequel feels like it's absolutely pointed towards Star Wars and what's happening there, what's happening at Disney, what's happening with Marvel. It's weird that this film came out the same weekend, or at least it was on at the same time as Spider-Man No Way Home. Yeah, we should mention, before we get into the film, we do have experience with the Matrix films in the past, and we normally ask the question like, what kind of background do you have with the series? Is this something you've seen before? But we've already covered the sequels on a previous episode.
So this is a sequel.
This is a legacy sequel.
Yeah, belated sequel. Because I think we recorded that about 5 years ago.
And it's actually going to be a meta take on late podcast sequels.
Yeah.
This episode.
Yeah.
So we've been through all that. We are very familiar with the Matrix films, but yeah, this is really your first time watching this, and you're going at it like first time, first reaction, really.
It wasn't the disaster I was led to believe it was, because it got a really harsh write-up when it came out. I mean, even outside of its actual critics review, in terms of like YouTube reviewers.
Yes, yeah, I would agree.
People had just ripped it a new arsehole sort of thing. And for some of the very same reasons it was critiquing, it's one of those films that maybe has its cake and eats it sort of thing, but I kind of feel it goes further than that, to the point where it's almost like, at times, like the first half of the film especially felt like a parody of meta films.
Yeah.
Like it got so meta that it was almost like taking the piss out of meta. Like it was just going that extra mile to sort of take the piss out of that trend.
I look at that whole section of the film, and specifically everything to do with Warner Brothers.
Yeah.
I don't know how that got made.
I know, it's like it's because if you read up about the background of the film, it's like it's all there.
Yeah,
like it's bizarre that got passed. The only thing I can think of is this is the last film that got released as part of that 30-day simultaneous release. And I'm wondering why it's the last one and why they decided to leave it as the last one. Because I'm wondering whether Warner Brothers were a little bit uneasy about that. Because I felt like the film was very much underpromoted.
It was. Like, they started initially promoting it quite hard. And it was getting the views. Yeah. And then prior to release, it just dropped off. They just stopped promoting it pretty much entirely and let it just happened out there, kind of thing. There wasn't any fanfare really for its release. I know it was a weird time anyway, and people were navigating these choppy waters of pandemic film releases, but yeah, even in that regard, it still feels like it was left in rough seas, kind of thing.
Yeah. It's a strange one for me, because I kind of, on finishing it, I was thinking, is this perhaps the second best Matrix sequel?
I'm much more apologetic towards the Matrix sequels than you are. Even though the episode, I think I did come down on a negative side, I've always come back around to the Matrix sequels, and I have done in a big way. But I still think this is probably the second best. The commentary is just far more rewarding. And I think it's one of those ones that it dwells on you more. It sits with you.
Yeah, and I just think those are the films, they do have their virtues. and I do like some of the filmmaking. I think that for me is one of the biggest flaws of this film is that it constantly gives you like it's almost like a clip show at times, where it shows you what the other films were like and cuts back to I'm not sure whether it's even like a comment on that kind of thing, where it's like it's done so much. It's like Lana's doing it on purpose to say, this is the state we're in, because it being shot on digital, there were parts of it that looked quite good, and then there were other parts of it that looked like they were shot on an iPhone. There's something about, I'm not sure whether it's certain kind of cameras or the way that are used, but in how digital cameras capture motion, there's something still not quite right about it when you compare it to what film cameras do, which have been engineered over decades, and they have it down to a T, and those standards were put in place because they worked. And when you're constantly cutting between clips of the previous films which were shot on film and then going back, it's very jarring.
Yeah, it is.
But I feel like it's done deliberately so to sort of highlight the difference.
The thing is about the digital look is I do think it is a jarring contrast to the previous Matrix films. And I do think in terms of visual identity, the previous Matrix films have this one pipped by quite a margin.
Yeah.
But I do appreciate that this one is like to the point of them not repeating themselves. It has a brand new identity. I watched it in 4K the last couple of times I saw it, and it looks good in 4K. It's like a demo reel when it's at its best. I agree with you again, like, because I think when we get into where my complaints are for the film, we are going to get into the same things, which are really like in terms of the action, in terms of some of the practical aspects of filmmaking where it suffers, or it doesn't really reinvent itself enough in a way. But yeah, I mean, I do agree with you on that front as well, specifically as well in terms of that contrast between digital filmmaking and the previous film like footage. It is jarring to have that, and it's not just once or twice at the beginning, it's throughout, and it feels like it's at every moment there's some sort of like strong character interaction between legacy characters. You get a flash of something, it's like, hey, remember? Do you remember? Do you remember? And it feels like it's saying something on that level. But yeah, and before we really like start to deconstruct the film, just like it's deconstructed the series, I guess we should get into some background for this film. And I mean, I will say, as somebody who had been a fan of The Matrix, I thought that this was going to get made a lot sooner than it did. I think I was talking to you like way back in the day, like, oh, by 2015 there'll be a Matrix sequel. I know it. I know it. They'll get the whole gang back together and it'll be some new trilogy. And then when Star Wars happened, I was like, yep, it's definitely happening. It's definitely happening. And it took until 2021 for this to come out. And it seems like it wasn't something that was just like on the back burner for Warner Brothers. It was something they were actively pursuing, but it just for one reason or another didn't come together. And I guess one of the most famous iterations that didn't get made was with the screenwriter Zach Penn, who's known for such classic superhero films as X-Men: The Last Stand, The Incredible Hulk. He did write the story for The Avengers, but then he also did go on and write the screenplay for Ready Player One and Free Guy. That's where we're at with that. He also... he was credited on a Jack Slater. I guess he was one of the many writers that was involved. Oh, he was. He was like the original writer of Last Action Hero. So he's credited with Jack Slater creating that character, which feels akin with this film in some way. He was involved in the screenwriting process. They were making a Morpheus prequel or Morpheus sequel. They didn't know what at that time. We still don't know what it was. But it was going to star Michael B. Jordan, and it was either going to be about the early days of Morpheus, which, who cares? Or it was going to be about a descendant of Morpheus in the Matrix world, and etc., etc., etc. As I say, starring Michael B. Jordan, that didn't come together. It was like, he did mention that there were two projects in development at the same time, two Matrix projects, and it was his Morpheus project, and then there was also the film that was being worked on separately with Lana Wachowski. And in the end, Warner Brothers chose, in a stunning move, like such a strange move, they chose the one that was most critical of Warner Brothers. And that whole process. In fact, it even this film even has comments on that whole background
Yeah.
with the film.
Yeah.
And even like with Lana and Lily, Lily's not back in this one because she just did not want to revisit the Matrix films. I think she kind of cashed out at Jupiter Ascending when it came to working with studios anymore.
Yeah.
And I think that's a weird thing as well, because The Matrix Resurrections is the kind of film you make when you're cashing in your chips, when it's like, okay, if you're going to give me a blank check to do whatever I want, I'm going to do something fucking crazy.
Yeah.
However, really, Lana's coming off the back of Jupiter Ascending, which is a huge failure of a film.
Yeah.
Like, it was a critical failure. It failed at the box office. And yet, she still had the clout, really, to come back at this and be like, demanding full free reign, blank check. And I'm surprised that she got it. I'm fair play to her, but I'm surprised that she was ever given that opportunity.
It's doubly weird that the film was greenlit at all if the studio had bothered to read the screenplay. I'm wondering if they actually did, or whether Lana gave them a fake screenplay.
Yeah, you know what? It could be. It could be, yeah.
Because it's a very snarky film when it comes to talking about anything to do with studio machinations and
Focus grouping and
oh god, yeah,
films made by committee.
Yeah.
I love that whole segment. Neo is in the Lana Wachowski role, and he doesn't say a single thing, or at any point is ever asked what his opinion is.
Yeah.
You know? It's like
As
a whole
the
5-minute
creator.
sequel.
Yeah,
As the original creator, nobody says, what does the Matrix mean to you?
Yeah.
It's all about what it means to them, and it's never anything more than bullet time and cats, apparently.
Yeah. Also, as well, this is a film that's born out of grief.
Yes.
As well, which is also a reason for the split of the Wachowskis. So both of the Wachowskis' parents died very close to each other. I think in 2019.
Yeah.
I think they were both kind of done with the series anyway, which is why we didn't get that 2015 like rumblings of any kind of sequel. But yeah, that was the reason why Lily didn't want to get involved anyway. But also it was the same reason as to why Lana wanted to revisit the series, because it was the case of like, if I can't keep my parents alive, I have these two other characters who are very important within my life that I can keep alive and resurrect as such. So that was the impetus of it. And I imagine that combination of the studio pushing and then that opportunity to like literally resurrect the characters resulted in this film, which the whole production of it is just bonkers. And even in the production, when they had to halt the production due to the pandemic, there's that whole thing where she was like, should I just leave it?
Yeah.
As this great unfinished production. And obviously she was persuaded to finish it, but it was one of those things like, should I just do that? Like, we started the film, but because of circumstances.
Yeah, it feels like a grand experiment.
Yeah,
in that way.
that's why I feel like a lot of the things that people seem to complain about, they're all deliberate.
Yes, yeah.
There's nothing unintentional about anything that she's doing.
I really like the Wachowskis. I don't think they are infallible as filmmakers.
No.
I think that there are certain films, and there are even the good films that I like have some certain flaws to them as well. But I find them to be very interesting filmmakers.
Yeah.
Everything they make seems to be imbued with heart and thought. You know, and this certainly is that. However, I will say, like, this is a hard film to recommend to people because of this.
Yeah.
Because it very much depends on the baggage that you're bringing with you as well. I mean, even like, there's nothing wrong with that if you're the type of person that kind of likes the what they did with Star Wars and likes this kind of like this the whole Marvel superhero thing and everything like that. This film's very pointed at that kind of audience.
Yeah.
I can see why some people would take like some offense to that.
Yeah. If you're a hardcore movie fan, as opposed to, it's not a film, it's a movie kind of thing. If you're hardcore, if you love that kind of thing, the big studio blockbuster churn them out thing, you Marvel fanboys who like more stuff. Or if you're a casual moviegoer, this film isn't really going to play well for you.
No,
it's for those people in the middle.
Yeah, it really is.
And I completely understand why it would have pissed off a large proportion of not just casual fans, but like hardcore movie fans.
Yeah,
because it's almost like commenting on the audience as well, who lap that kind of stuff up.
Yeah,
you know, the kind of people that complain about it, but then they still go.
Of course, yeah.
You know, Gareth.
I know you are.
So
I did bring Spider-Man No Way Home to your house to watch later if you so choose to.
Yeah, which we'll watch, so we're complete hypocrites. But it's only because you own it, I didn't buy it.
You buy it through me.
I'm seeing it for free.
You do it through osmosis.
Therefore, I'm not fueling their business.
I know if I don't buy it, you don't see it. So. Yeah. And who am I going to talk to about these things?
But yeah, it really straddles a very fine line.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's where the self-sabotage comes into it, because she would have known this. It's kind of like a big sort of fuck you to the studio in a way for leaning on them so much, and also for maybe not supporting them on some of their other projects.
Yeah.
His kind of Lana having the last laugh. But at the same time, there's things in it that are just so much more focused and purposeful than anything in Reloaded or Revelations.
Yeah.
I think people do sometimes tend to look back on those films a little bit with rose-tinted spectacles. When we reviewed them, they had their moments, but especially Reloaded, I think we were much more favourable to Revelations for what it was actually trying to do, even though that had, has huge flaws in it. But Reloaded is just a huge, vacuous, noisy waste of a film, really, which doesn't know how to. I mean, those two films really don't know how to handle Neo.
Well, I mean, that's my greatest criticism, is that, like, if you have, even when you watch the films back to back and you judge them as being some 4 to 5 hour epic, there's still a 40-minute period where Neo's not in in the
Yeah, I think I counted it as like 28 minutes or something like that.
It's which is like, considering he's such the focus. I know it's more of an ensemble, and but you can at least say about Resurrections is that it's never not Neo's journey, or Trinity's for that matter, even though she has lesser screen time.
Yeah, and this is another criticism that a lot of people have pointed towards it, that structurally, story-wise, very similar to the first Matrix, but again, I think that's the point.
Yeah. I mean, it's in the same way like Star Wars: The Force Awakens.
Yeah.
But it's weird because, I mean, we hate to use that term because it's become something of a meme, even though I do think it has some value. But where it repeats itself, it at least does so in a subversive way.
Yeah.
And it does repeat itself a lot, but it feels like rather than being just, as with The Force Awakens, it was just kind of like, there was no commentary to that. It was just like, we are just repeating it because we know this is what people like and it's easy.
Yeah.
Whereas with this one, it feels like it's very much the point. Like there's purpose behind it. That very Agent Smith purpose behind that, and commentary as well. I think this is as well. Like, I have an issue with films and TV shows that get overly meta, because it does take me out of it. It's a very Christopher Nolan says as well, like, he doesn't like to show other films in his films. He doesn't like people to go to the cinema. That's why Batman, young Bruce Wayne goes to watch a stage show rather than going to see, I can't remember what it was, something like The Lone Ranger or something that. As is per the comic. He doesn't like to show cinema screens because he thinks it takes the audience out of the film, because suddenly they're looking at a screen within a screen. And I have the same issue with meta films, is that there are films that do it like in universe, like Scream. That's fine. That's something completely different. I mean, films that are like about, for example, Red Dwarf Back to Earth, the TV show.
Oh God, yeah.
It's about the characters, meeting the writer and that kind of thing. Or another thing that did it, another TV show, but did it as a movie, The League of Gentlemen Apocalypse.
I mean, League of Gentlemen at least tried as a new thing.
Yeah.
Red Dwarf gets no excuses because that came afterwards. So they get their hands wrapped for that, because it's basically the fucking same thing as well. Like, they literally did the same thing and completely missed the point of their own show in the same.
Yeah.
I mean, both of them did that. In trying to do that, they both missed the point of what made their shows special.
Yeah. And they kind of like disappear up their own backside. And even with Red Dwarf, it feels like it's just hitting this one note joke, which is, remember Blade Runner?
Yeah, which is
weird.
The weirdest thing.
Yeah.
I mean, thankfully, it kind of found its feet again a little bit after that.
Yes. Yeah.
With Series 10, but yeah, that Back to Earth, you can just completely skip that. Really,
I would recommend it.
Yeah.
But what this film does differently that I think makes everything else work is that despite all, like, one, it wouldn't work without the meta angle. It is intrinsic to the film's purpose, to the film's commentary, to the themes that are being explored. But two, despite all of that cynicism, it still comes across as being an incredibly earnest and heartfelt film when it comes to specifically dealing with the characters.
Yeah.
Like, it's clear that Lana has a lot of love for Neo and Trinity, and it has a lot invested in their journey. And when it actually deals with the character beats on like a personal level, that cynicism melts away. It's always there in terms of the world. The commentary is always there in terms of the world, in terms of like the character, the analyst, and things that Bugs is saying and Morpheus is exploring. But whenever it gets to that Neo and Trinity a relationship, and even the conversation between Neo and Niobe, that becomes background, and the emotional core of the film like comes to the forefront.
Yeah.
Like, as an example, I love Gremlins 2, but that is just fucking chaos.
Yeah.
That is just pure, unadulterated, untapped Joe Dante chaos.
Yeah.
And I feel like this film has that for a while.
Yeah.
But then it remembers that it brings those characters and that kind of heart, and you can see why when you look at the background that you mentioned in terms of like it being informed by the Wachowskis' parents passing away rather close to each other. She's hanging out with old friends and kind of like working away to earn the happy ending that she thinks they probably deserved.
Yeah, because there was always something a little bit unsatisfying about Revolutions. Not that this particularly satisfies it, but it kind of, it does kind of make a comment on that kind of thing in this particular situation can't be satisfied in a way. It's kind of things go on and get recycled.
Yeah, yes.
As such, really.
Yes. Even the people.
Yeah. Yeah.
That scene as well where they are shown to be worked on by the robots over the years as they're brought back to life, and you see Neo with his chest cavity open and robots crawling in and out of it. It made me think on this particular watch, I was like, Star Wars doesn't have that. Star Wars doesn't have a scene in which Mark Hamill's eye is being plucked out and looked at by a little tiny robot, or his brain is being worked on. It's like, you'd very rarely get these kind of like franchises that show characters in this kind of way and with this kind of vulnerability, with imagery that is genuinely upsetting to see.
Yeah.
And I quite like that flash because it reminded me of, I don't know if you've seen it, but the Animatrix TV series. Not TV series, the short films.
Yeah.
Yeah, there was a great one in there that's about the history of the war with the machines.
Yes. Yeah, I've seen that one.
And that's probably the best one of the lot.
Yeah.
And that felt like it was a purposeful nod towards that and towards the brutality of certain machines in this world as well.
Yeah.
So we have been speaking about like the very many positives about the background of this film and the intent behind it. But I guess it's fair of us to really like talk about some of the things as well that we found flaws in.
Yeah.
And I mean, where would you say that this film faltered for you, Andy?
I think for me, you can tell that someone in the directing team is missing, because I don't feel like the film is as well directed as the previous three. I mean, especially the first one. I mean, the second two do have their issues on a directing level. But I feel like because she did all the second unit, there was no second unit. She did all the action sequences herself. I'm not 100% sure that was the best idea, because...
Yeah, I'm surprised that they didn't bring James McTeague back.
Yeah, because the action is a little bit lacking, and the editing and everything, and the staging is very sloppy at times, which I don't think was an intentional thing.
No, I don't think so either.
I think it kind of highlighted maybe, is that Lily's area, or is that getting the outside people in? Because the action didn't really hold up when you compare it to the other three films.
In a way, it reminded me of Batman Begins.
Yeah.
The action in terms of that. Like, this is a film, much like Batman Begins, that works for me despite its action.
Yeah.
Because very, very strangely for this director, feels like it's someone finding their footing in action.
Yeah.
Whereas previously, it's looked very much like they've had a very strong grasp on like action filmmaking and action blocking and, where to move the camera. And this one feels a lot more haphazard. And I completely understand the point of coming into this film and saying everything that you think about The Matrix, we're going to do differently. Yeah. Like, if you want bullet time, we're not really going to do that. And when you do see it, it's different.
Yeah.
And, you want this kind of action, you want guns, Neo doesn't shoot a bullet in the whole film.
No.
In fact, he's almost like his whole deal in this one is being able to deflect. He's almost very passive in a way in finding his voice. Yeah. And it purposely doesn't repeat itself in many aspects, even though it feels like it's going to at some point.
Yeah, yeah.
But when it comes down to the action itself, I get the point of doing something new. But this doesn't feel as good nor clever enough of a divergence.
No, no.
Is it as enjoyable as the previous films? No. Is it as like well blocked? No. Is it as interesting? Not really. you know, I understand that maybe some like intent behind it, saying, "Oh well, you know, action films these days, blah blah blah." But I don't think that's particularly true.
No.
Like I think we're in a period of time as well where action films have found a little bit of a footing again in terms of choreography. And yeah, even as a comment, I think on the action in general, it falls a little bit flat. And I think that Lana probably needed a helping hand to deal with the action. I think someone like James McTeague, who's tried his hand at being a director, didn't quite come together, and he's gone back to second unit as well. I think he's done some TV stuff. I think he needed like that kind of hand to come back and kind of help along.
Yeah, because for me, those two things, the action and the digital photography, were the two sort of big negatives.
Yeah.
Which again, if you're a real Matrix fan and you're a casual movie fan and you're coming in expecting that, then I can see why it would be disappointing.
Yeah, absolutely. I had trouble like recommending it to my brother because I know what he wants from a Matrix film. And what this isn't going to give him.
No.
This is not going to provide on that level.
No.
I think there's some great imagery in this film, but it's not as viscerally kind of engaging as previous Matrix films have been.
I think there was also, there are issues with pacing and tone.
Yeah.
Especially when you compare the front half with the back half.
Yes, yeah.
There's quite a big difference. There are moments where it does feel a bit slow.
Yeah, there's a fair bit of back and forth between IO and I guess the Matrix, where the characters are in IO, they're out of IO, they're in IO, they're out of IO again. And it feels like there's a lot of like, this could have been streamlined somehow.
Yeah, and there's a couple of things which don't, again, when Niobe imprisons Neo and he spends all of like 5 seconds in the prison before he's broken out.
It was the roughest 5 seconds that he's ever had.
Yeah, that part of it didn't particularly work for me.
It never felt like there was any true intent there. you know, it kind of just brushed past it very quickly.
Yeah, if they weren't making a big thing out of it and there was a time jump or something, you could have just lost that bit, to be honest.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
so, and also like it is the longest of the Matrix films.
Oh, it is, yeah.
So there is a little bit of fat, I think, that which could have been chopped out. But then again, there's a couple of things where it does rush through.
Like the whole Niobe backstory with the machines turning on themselves for power. Oh, that's maybe something that could have been explored in The Matrix as well.
Yeah, yeah.
Maybe there are rebellious programs, maybe there's riots and things like that within The Matrix.
And even what happens to Trinity at the end is a very... a
bit wishy-washy.
Abbreviated, yeah. It's one of those characters where she's talked about an awful lot, but she doesn't have a ton of screen time.
And she has very little screen time as Trinity herself.
Yeah, yeah. So there's things like that which definitely are flaws, I would say. But then there's things in the film where they maybe did this much better than the previous 2 sequels. And I really want to compare the Architect with the Analyst.
Yeah.
Because I feel like the Analyst is a much, much, much better character and utilised much better than the Architect was, because that Architect scene is, I mean, it's been parodied so many times now, but I feel like how they use the Analyst and also his motivation and everything is so much more interesting.
Yeah, for sure. Than just being, I'm Colonel Sanders, the man who created the Matrix.
After I'd finished my chicken.
With all famous 11 herbs and spices. Perhaps a Zynga Tower, Mr. Anderson. But yeah, I do like Neil Patrick Harris in this film. He does do something that makes me laugh though, which is anytime he says the word Thomas, he sounds like he's in a Tom and Jerry cartoon.
Thomas?
Thomas? And it always makes me think of that. But I like him as a character. I like everything. Even his room is like his therapy room is far more interesting to look at. It's far more detailed than the Architect's kind of like bank of television screens. Like I like that there's a captured butterfly in the background, like a caged butterfly. It's like this is where Neo's at, and his wallpaper is like a maze itself as well.
Yeah,
it's all these little nods towards where Neo is in his journey. And yeah, I really quite like that character a lot. And again, that's also part of the reason why that succeeds, is probably why the film failed with its audiences for me. Because it's completely different towards anything that the previous Matrix films have done in terms of an antagonistic force. We've never seen it in this way, and with this kind of like personality. Even on the level in terms of like the way that it deals with Agent Smith, with what's his name? Jonathan Groff.
Yeah.
Yeah, even the way that it deals with him. He's definitely very fabulous in this film.
Yeah.
That is somebody they did try and get, what's his name now? Hugo Weaving. They did try and get Hugo Weaving back for this film, but unfortunately he was already signed on to something else, and then it got delayed due to COVID anyway, and he could have done it, but they were already shooting with Jonathan Groff.
Yeah.
And I do think perhaps they would have had, those scenes would have had more weight with
Hugo
Weaving.
It is a shame, I think, that didn't happen, because
there's nothing against Jonathan Groff in this film. I like Jonathan Groff, and I think he's fine, but he doesn't quite have the screen presence that Hugo Weaving has in this role. And I think if that's where they were going with the character as well, Hugo Weaving could have had a lot of fun playing it that way. Yeah,
I feel like there's a little bit of a given what happens in Revolutions, there's a bit of a disconnect there.
Yeah.
I get the reasoning, but I think, it would have worked better if we'd had like an older, maybe bearded Hugo Weaving, like as his boss, and then you have that kind of thing, because it's all about I mean, the other thing as well is the Morpheus character, well, which is kind of weird. At the same time, I quite like.
I think he's only called Morpheus, as a way, because this is what the films do. They kind of bring back these characters, repurpose these characters, they give them a fresh lick of paint. Maybe another actor plays them. He's only Morpheus in name only. He's a program really that's been made up of character traits from Morpheus and Agent Smith.
I like that character, and I like how I love some of the ideas of how they've sort of moved on in the world, where you've got programs interacting in the physical space.
Yes,
I really like that idea. And I like the fact that there are some friendly machines, and even things like when they were doing the fruit with regrowing fruit based on the code.
Yeah.
Which I found quite interesting.
I love that whole idea. That's something, again, I wish the film had perhaps explored a little bit more of.
Yeah, because the thing is, there are parts of the film that do feel a little bit cheap when you can. Obviously, the digital photography doesn't help, but the city of Io feels like it's like 3 sets with about 10 people.
One of them with a Funko Pop statue of Morpheus.
Yeah, it doesn't look like Lawrence Fishburne at all, does it?
No, it does. It does definitely feel like a Funko Pop version of him.
Yeah, it's
just
like
giant eyes.
Hollywood Waxworks Museum version. But I mean, not that I completely love those scenes in those films, but the Zion sequences in the previous 2 Matrix films felt big.
Yes,
like you felt like there was a lot of people in that city, all raving, of course.
Yeah, raving mad.
That aged so poorly, that scene. But with Io, it felt very small.
Yeah.
It didn't feel like a real breathing city, which I thought was a shame considering how big it looks. You barely get any kind of feeling that there's a big city there.
No, and it's you don't really
populated.
That's it. There's no crowd. There are no crowds, and I kind of get why with what happened, like with the pandemic, and that kind of thing. Maybe there had been something there, but there are no crowds. And it doesn't feel like it is populated beyond the characters that are involved in the film itself. There are no extras kind of milling about. It does feel like a very underpopulated location.
Naomi's like, I created this city and no fucker lives in it.
No.
So, yeah.
It's like her retirement home.
Yeah.
But yeah, what do you think about Jada Pinkett Smith in this film?
Yeah, it's an interesting, it's a bit of a weird character to bring back, because she wasn't a particularly amazing character in the previous sequels. So yeah, it's a bit weird why they would bring that particular character back over some of the other ones.
I think the reason as well that they couldn't bring Lawrence Fishburne back in any way, shape or form, even though he would be quite a bit older.
Yeah.
I don't know, you could always excuse that he's been in some sort of cryo sleep or something silly like that. But in the Matrix Online video game that came out after the series, Morpheus dies in universe in the video game.
Right. Okay.
And they wanted to keep that because they always said that video game was canon.
Yeah.
I never played it. It was like an online game. They wanted to keep it true that game remains canon, but for anybody that hasn't played it, it doesn't really matter,
Yeah.
That's one of the reasons that I think that they didn't bring Lawrence Fishburne back in the role as well.
It is a shame, though, because I feel like if you'd supplanted that character as Morpheus, it probably would have had way more weight to it.
Yeah, maybe if they had done the commentary on de-aged, like they had a de-aged Lawrence Fishburne in the role, CGI de-aging, and made it more of a commentary on that with that Morpheus character.
Yeah. Although it would have been nice to have actually had him old, because it would have been like...
Oh, yeah, I see what you mean,
You know, I'm trying to think the last time they even see each other in the third film. It was quite early on.
Yeah.
So it would have been some time. It would have been quite poignant, I think, if he'd seen him, and then also the fact that Neo's not aged that much, whereas he's got much older. There would have been definitely some weight behind it.
Yeah, a little bit more weight than there is.
Yeah.
The one thing I do like, though, about the Niobe scene is kind of like, it's all a bit sad. There's a certain melancholy to the film as well.
Yeah.
And it's all a bit... I guess that's also why people didn't quite respond to it, is it's a much more thoughtful film in that way. It's far sadder. The characters are in a much more depressing state. There's a lot about suicide in the film as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of playing into that belated sequel thing. It's kind of really saying this is after the party.
Yes,
sort of thing. It's a much more complex situation now than it's just good versus evil, humans versus machines. It's a bit more grey.
And Neo really doesn't have a place in the real world. He returns back and they're like, oh no. You're gonna ruin everything.
Yeah,
it's not what you expect. You expect this kind of like triumphant return.
Neo.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
the stupid little mouse, kid. I read all your comics, Neo. I'm your biggest fan.
And but there's none of that. There is absolutely none of that. And instead, it's just like, what have I been doing in the last 20 years? Well, loads of people died. And we got old.
Yeah.
There's a lot less fanfare to his return, which, again, it's a bit of a subversion, but I really enjoyed that.
Yeah, I mean, you do have the Neo fan club. I mean,
yes,
which
that's
is
true,
like,
yeah.
Bugs and the team. But yeah, they're not well liked within the city.
No,
sort of thing. So, yeah, they're kind of out on a limb. I'll tell you one thing I really did like as like a new thing within the interaction between the world. I loved that the operator was in the scene.
Yes,
thought that was quite cool. It was just a nice visual, not just an editor. It was like he was literally in the
he could
scene,
patch himself in.
Yeah, I did like some of the new ideas in that. Yeah, like the physical manifestation of the programs and the good machines, and even the look that they'd given Neo and Trinity when they're in the real world. Like they'd really gone to town on the fucking like massive fucking plug in the back of their neck.
Yes,
like, you're here for the duration.
Yeah,
it's like that kind of thing where they'd really like over-engineered their plugs.
Yeah.
So they'd be permanently there. I mean, that's the other thing I really liked about the analyst character in comparison to, say, the architect, because the architect and the other characters that are in the sequels, they're all so stoic and serious. There's no, Smith is the only real one that's kind of playful in any way. And
the Merovingian.
Yeah, well, he's a different thing entirely. In a way. But he's kind of one of those kind of characters that really he's like a one scene and out character.
That's it.
You can't really have him.
No.
Wouldn't really work in that way. But in terms of the analyst, I love that basically he's just a businessman.
Yes, yeah.
And this is just a business opportunity,
and he's
for
working
him.
For the suits. You know? Which couldn't get any more on the nose.
But it's the fact that he saw the power of Neo and Trinity and gone, oh, this is solving our energy crisis. So let's rebuild them, do this thing, keep them apart. This is fueling our power. Yeah. That's the only reason they're there, and that they're sort of been hidden from each other. And I really like that idea that it's just a business venture for him to keep this world alive with less people in it.
Yeah, that's it, yeah.
I love the bots, actually, as well. I thought that was a great idea. The scene of where they have the kamikaze bots just jumping out of windows, that was great.
I like that little moment, though, where one of them is with his wife.
Yeah.
And it's just the scream out of her.
It was very They Live.
Yes, it
was,
yeah.
It was like, Gary?
I think that's one of the parts of the action that works for me. I think the The action sequence that worked the most is the chase through the city, is that part, because I feel like it has a couple of different elements to it.
I did actually write, given some of the tonal and pacing issues, last act is pretty good. I did like the whole Trinity heist.
Yes, yeah.
Like the whole third act was pretty solid.
It does take on the more like, it's more of a heist film.
Yeah.
for that.
Yeah.
I like the whole like plugging in, plugging out as well, like two people inhabiting the same body within the Matrix for a moment.
Yeah, there was some cool things and the showdown in Simulate. I think for me, like the second half maybe worked. I mean, the last act worked really well for me.
Yeah,
in that respect,
I really enjoyed this film, and I think that the first act is very solid, and the last act is really solid. But there's
a bit in the middle. Yeah,
and I would say it's more like there's just a little bit of flab kind of thing, you know, in the middle, and there's perhaps some time that you could have given up there to focus on other things elsewhere in the film. I personally have come round to responding in this film in a big way. I really, really quite like it on a personal level. But if I approach it like more objectively, that middle section is where like you could probably start to refocus some ideas, streamline some certain actions, and maybe provide a few extra minutes here and there where they'll be put to better use.
Yeah.
I also like talking about Trinity. One of the little Easter eggs that's involved, I like that her husband in The Matrix is called Chad. Also, that it's the director for Keanu Reeves from John Wick.
Yeah.
Also, that it's Keanu Reeves' previous body double.
Yeah.
Stunt double for the previous Matrix films. That feels right.
Yeah. I also like the fact that Neo's reflection is Carrie-Anne Moss's husband.
Is it?
Yeah.
I didn't know that. That's new to me.
Yeah, so that's how they sort of do the other side of that as well. There's tons of things to like about the film, and again, there's tons to not like if you're that way inclined. It's a real like, it's very much a Marmite film.
Yes,
I
yeah,
think.
100%.
And I think it's one of those films that maybe was a little bit misunderstood. Mm-hmm. I think. I mean, it's definitely for me. Definitely, it's got technical flaws. I would have much rather it been shot on film.
I agree, yeah.
And I'm still not quite sure about the whole flashing back to previous imagery.
Yeah, I agree.
It does jar. I'm not sure that it's intended to jar. Like we say, some of it does seem intentional, but it does take you out of the film quite a lot.
Yeah.
And does highlight the deficiencies.
There's a point where you could have cut that off after the first act. Like maybe if you were going to have that once or twice, like Agent Smith at the window, oblivious. Yeah. Maybe like setting up the initial characters, like, oh, this is who this is, that's who that is, this is where the characters, oh, remember that, and then moving past it. But it does it all the way through to the very end.
Yeah, you definitely could have done less of that, because it was effective in its first couple of appearances, but then it got a bit old quite quickly. I would have taken some of that stuff out because it did feel a little bit like a clip show.
Yes,
at times. You probably could have taken the runtime down by about 5 minutes. Some of that stuff out. Yeah. On a technical level, for me, it's like heavily flawed. And I'm not sure there is some sort of like intentional part.
You don't know where to draw that line, do you? Because
I
have that issue even when it comes to the technical flaws. I'm like, where do I draw the line? Where does this stop being commentary and just start being a flaw? When does it cross that line?
Yeah, because there are parts of it that look really good, and I do like I think the parts that look the best are in the real world.
I
in
agree.
The machine space when they're in the incubators and stuff like that. That looks really nice.
Looks amazing in 4K.
But some of it looks really cheap, like TV movie cheap.
Yeah,
which is bizarre, and really just show like how we're still not quite there yet. I mean, it may be. I don't know what cameras are used for this.
Even when it comes to films where digital photography has been well implemented.
Yeah.
And we look at films like Dune. Like Greg Fraser seems to be able to use digital photography.
Yeah, Greg Fraser,
really
Roger
well.
Deakins,
Roger Deakins also.
Yeah.
But even then, those films oftentimes have to go through a film pass in order to.
Well,
to get
Dune
did.
Dune's technically shot on film.
Yeah. I think part of it as well is like, we don't realize it, but grain structure is huge for certain types of films. Motion is as well, like in terms of the way characters move, but like the grain structure of certain films, you can't just, like many films filmmakers do these days, which is just give it a digital film grain pass.
No.
It doesn't work.
Yeah. Transplanting it to sound, it's like a little bit of tape hiss or like dithering. It's kind of like glue.
Yeah.
And it glues the frame together. There's a color depth as well that's not quite there yet as well. Yeah, and again, there's some cameras that do that better than others, and again,
Yes,
it's
for sure.
how you use it. So it could be because it's not the same cinematographer either. It's not Bill Pope,
Yeah.
who's was a very experienced cinematographer.
Yes.
Still works with Edgar Wright.
But he had some issues with the Wachowskis on the sequels, on the previous one, so I don't think he would be coming back even with under the best circumstances.
Yeah, because I did read one review that described it as being a very ugly looking film, which I can kind of argue saying, yeah, mate, it's not the best shot film of all time.
So one of the cinematographers is Danielle Massachese, but when you look at her background, she's more of a Steadicam operator.
Right.
This seems to be like one of the first major films of her career.
Right, okay.
She has worked with them from Jupiter Ascending and does seem to work with Ridley Scott quite significantly.
Right.
Another one is John Toll, and I think he's the more experienced hand. So he has a background in the likes of Braveheart, The Last Samurai, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So, but I imagine this has been something of like bringing Daniel Massachese into the forefront kind of thing. I think one of the things that she wanted to do with this film was diversify her crew, and bring some new fresh talent into the industry.
Yeah.
I will say another thing though that I do really appreciate about this film, and I did expect it actually to go the other way, was that its stakes are far more defined than previously. Like with the Matrix films, it's always been about the end of humanity, and that kind of thing. With this one, it feels more like, I say defined, it's more focused to just on a character level. What's at stake here are the characters.
Yeah.
It's got less of a thing about the fate of humanity rests on the actions of one man, kind of thing. It's more like these actions are going to affect yours and Trinity's future. It does come to affect a lot more than that, but it's mainly about them as characters, and it feels a lot more focused on that level. I think that's why it feels more personal. I actually find, like I say, the more I watching it this particular time and seeing those two characters interact with each other, it just felt a lot more emotional.
Yeah, I think that's why the last act worked for me more than, say, the last acts of Revolutions.
Yeah.
Just because with the attack on Zion and the final Neo-Smith confrontation in that, I feel very overextended.
Yeah.
And at times very impersonal, whereas I didn't have that problem with this film because it was very much focused on one thing, which was definitely a plus for me.
How did you feel about the music as well?
To be perfectly honest, I didn't really notice a huge difference between... I mean, I'll probably have to watch it again because there's only a film I've watched once, so I wasn't really hugely concentrating on the music. But it didn't seem like it was a jarring departure, even though it was a completely different team.
Yeah, it has got like a lot more. It has got the same like those kind of rolling brass sounds that the Matrix has, but it did feel a lot more Philip Glass, Koyanis Katsi as well at times.
Yeah.
Like there's a lot of like cyclic. Oh god, I can't even say it.
Well, it's talking about the cycles.
Yeah, cycles. Yeah. So there's a lot more of that in it. And it feels like apt, really, for the film that they're making. Intentional.
Well, what was it? Tom Twyker and Johnny Klimek.
Yeah.
I love Johnny Klimek. Anyway, his score with what's it called? Reinhold.
Those German fellas.
His 1 hour photo score
Yes.
is fantastic. Like the end credits cue for that film is one of my favorite pieces of music of all time.
It's brilliant.
Yeah.
It's absolutely wonderful.
Yeah, good pedigree to replace Don Davis.
Yeah.
But unusually, because they'd obviously they had a long-standing relationship with the Wachowskis.
Yeah.
They were in a position to actually write a version of the score before they even started shooting.
Oh, right.
So that did inform how certain scenes were edited together and the feel of things. So that was a nice thing, I think, to do.
And it does feel like Lana is bringing together like the old, like it's not the old crew from The Matrix, but like a crew that she's assembled over the years of fellow filmmakers. I mean, having Tom Twyker as well, a filmmaker in his own right, a director in his own right, come on board to do the music side and just purely focus on that. And having like David Mitchell from Cloud Atlas, who wrote the book for Cloud Atlas.
He wrote parts of Sense8 as well.
Yes, Sense8,
But there's even cast members from, like you've got Freema Agyeman there, who was in Sense8, and Christina Ricci as well from Speed Racer.
Lady not appearing in this movie?
Yeah. Yeah.
Why is she in this film? She's in it for like one scene. It's a great scene. She's
but
fun.
it's like it's a fun cameo, isn't it?
I feel like it's one of those things that slipped out before the film came out, whether they didn't originally intend.
Yeah.
I think it came out of the test screenings that they did, because this film tested extensively. I don't think much changed about it at all.
Weird.
But they tested it extensively, and in the end, they just went with whatever Lana had.
I wouldn't even know how you'd even go about testing this film.
Yeah, it actually, the reviews that came out of the testing side of things were mixed positive.
Yeah.
Consistently. Which was actually quite shocking. That when I saw the final film, I was like, wow, they've really taken a swing at this,
Yeah.
What's strange, though, about this film is that it feels like a coda. It doesn't feel like an installation of the Matrix franchise.
Yeah,
It feels like an epilogue, in a way. As some people said that they felt like it looks like it's meant to kick off a new trilogy, but I don't feel like it is. I feel like it's, like you say, it's slamming the book closed.
Yeah.
It's The Godfather 3.
Yeah, I was going to say... The Matrix Part 4, The Death of Thomas Anderson.
They need Francis Ford Coppola to recut it.
Yeah. Like, he seems to do one a movie a year now at the moment. Well,
Yeah.
probably not now, because he's embroiled in that film.
Megalopolis.
Oh, my God. Yeah,
Mega mouthful.
that's going to be a... Well,
It's going to be a film, maybe.
Well, we were talking about it just before, weren't we? I was like, yeah, it's either going to be a film that's so ridiculously long that no one was going to go out and see it, or it's either going to be chopped to ribbons by the studio whenever that gets distributed, or it's going to end up as like some miniseries on some streaming service.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's definitely a film to watch.
Yeah.
Because it's already proving rather fruity.
The thing is France. I mean, when you look at the kind of like emotional and physical toll that it's, it cost on Francis Ford Coppola making Apocalypse Now.
Yeah.
Is he in any good shape, really, to
No.
withstand this? I know he lost a lot of weight. He purposely said he got into some shape and lost a lot of weight to make this film. But the guy's in like his 80s.
Yeah, the story is definitely ongoing for that one.
Yeah.
It'll be... I feel like it's going to be one for the history books.
I agree. I'm
in one way or another.
very much looking forward to it.
Oh, one thing as well. How did you feel about the Merovingian's appearance in this film? It is sort of extremely meta dialogue.
I think that like the action scene is secondary to everything he's saying. Like, the action, I'm like, nah, I don't care. Give him more screen time. Give him more to say. I loved it. I loved it. He's even saying stuff about legacy sequel trash and all this kind of stuff. Sequel reboot rehash. And
Yeah.
I love that he's wearing all of these different coats that have just like been shredded down to. It's like I feel like though that he wasn't ever actually on the set. They just had a stand-in because anytime you see him in full body,
he was
with the
just
character,
there for an afternoon, and they cut that in. Definitely, because he's not in any of the shots outside of the ones that he's actually focused on.
But that's actually like such a fun inclusion. I loved every line that he had to speak. Again, though, how did that page ever make it past Warner Brothers? I applaud them. I applaud them for having like the kind of balls to go ahead with this and to give Lana free reign to make the movie that she wanted to make. Because if you read this script, you'd be going, oh, well, there's no Matrix films after this. Oh, so this is it, is it? All right, okay. Green light. I can't see any way that this would have ever gone forward. It's like, we're going to get into the stats and facts in just a moment. And they're almost so inconsequential because it doesn't fucking matter. This was always going to be the fucking end. Yeah. What did you think about the Merv? Even his name, the Merv.
It's just bizarre. I kind of loved it, but at the same time, it's one of those scenes again which would really piss some people off.
100%.
Like, if you're not into that kind of thing, then yeah, you wouldn't get much out of it, to be honest.
You need to be on the same wavelength as the movie, I think.
And its placing is so bizarre.
Yeah.
That it's kind of funny. Yeah, this is such a Marmite film. It really is.
Do you think that we will see any further Matrix films? And I don't say sequels, I mean Matrix films in general.
Oh, God, I don't know. I think, in a way, I imagine that Lana's kind of happy with the result of the box office of this film, because it might not completely close the door on any future Matrix projects, but it closes the book maybe in this format. Part of me thinks, would it be a while now, or would it go to something like television or something like that?
Yeah, maybe. I mean, at the moment, the Warner Brothers are in like a pretty terrible state with what's going on with David Zaslav.
Yeah.
And what's happening to HBO Max, which was probably the best streaming service that was out there, really.
Yeah.
And that's been completely gutted. And
bizarrely so as well.
Yeah.
They cancelled Westworld, which
they cancelled Westworld, but they still have to pay everybody.
Yeah, but the fact that they got rid of it off the service, which didn't make any sense. I don't understand why they did that. There's some weird
tax write-offs.
Yeah, some weird stuff going on.
They can't write them off, apparently, if they are still available to watch. To be a tax write-off, they have to be unavailable.
Wow. Yeah.
So, that's part of the issue that's going on. So a lot of things are just being straight up deleted from existence, which, again, this is why I'm a physical media collector.
Yeah. Yeah.
And will remain so.
Oh, totally. I think, if anything, the last couple of years have really kind of proved that you should really own it physically, because some of these things can just get taken away from you straight away.
Well, physical media is actually on the up again, weirdly, for the first time in a very long time, and I think it's because of the state that we're in, where suddenly we have to own about like 80 quid's worth of streaming services per month, to be able to watch this and that from everywhere. It's much easier now to just say, that's what I want to watch, I'm going to buy the DVD.
I mean, also as well, I feel like people are actually starting to become a little bit disillusioned with the whole streaming thing. Like the last 6 months, especially, with all the issues with Disney Plus, all the issues with Netflix, again HBO Max, and the weird stuff that's happening in terms of things that are being commissioned, things that are being cancelled. Yeah, like Netflix. I think I read something the other day about what's the point in people starting new series if they know they're going to be that $18.99. Yeah, what was the point?
I was going to watch that. I'm not going to bother now.
It's like, why should we bother watching your series, Netflix, if you're not going to finish? Yeah, you're giving us no impetus to even invest any time in
I won't watch anything new on Netflix, because it's a folly. Yeah, it's such a folly. You'd never know what's going forward, what isn't, and if anything, that's going to create a chain reaction where more and more shit gets cancelled. But with Netflix, I mean, things can be still being watched and be quite popular and still get cancelled, because even though they are popular with a Netflix core fan base, they are not driving new subscriptions.
I think what's happened, and as well with especially with things like the Disney Plus losses and stuff, that this model hasn't actually been that well thought out.
No, I mean, we're seeing the back fall out already, the bottom fall out.
Yeah, we're in a really interesting time in cinema, and having a film like this comment on some of the things that are going on is kind of an interesting thing. But again, it's one of those things which people either think, is that an old thing? But I think it goes so far out of its way to do that it becomes much more than just a meta thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
And if we go now to the stats and facts, I think there's definitely a real closed-bookedness about the whole thing.
Yes.
And something that I think Lana would probably be quite happy with the end result.
Yeah, for sure. So I will start with the... do you want to do it old school, where I'll do the critics?
Oh, yeah.
We'll do that. Thingy? All right, yeah.
Seeing as we're in person, this is like whole meta as well, the fact we're doing this in person, which we haven't done for the longest time.
A long time. Oh my God, you're touching me.
Yeah. Touched his knee then. It's very physical and tactile. I like it.
Mm-hmm.
None of this virtual shit.
So, in terms of the critical reaction to the film, on Rotten Tomatoes, it has a 63% average rate. So, has a 63% tomato meter rating. Oh my God.
Sorry, I'll stop touching your leg now.
I'm just so flustered. So, in terms of the critical reception, it has a 63% tomato meter reading, and that is after 357 reviews, so quite a lot. The average rating from the critics is 6.2 out of 10, and it has a critical consensus of, if it lacks the original's bracingly original craft, The Matrix Resurrections revisits the world of the franchise with wit, a timely perspective, and heart. That's a mouthful with the first part.
They should have used another word other than original.
Original, yeah.
Original.
And in terms of the audience score, it's a very similar story. It has a 63% popcorn rating and a 3.6 out of 10 average rating, which is slightly higher than I thought it would be. Now, here we go. I'll just move over to the review that I have here from Empire magazine. Again, I did ask Roger Ebert to contribute, but he just doesn't respond to my calls. I don't know what's going on there, but he stopped a few years ago and he hasn't got back in touch, so...
He wouldn't be responding anyway. Bless him.
I'm using a Ouija board.
Oh my god. Yeah, but even before he died, he wouldn't be responding.
So, in terms of the review from Empire, it's from Alex Godfrey, and he says, when asked a few months ago why she wasn't involved, Lily Wachowski said that she just wasn't of a mind to do a retread, to do something she had done before. Lana felt the opposite. Their parents having just died, she found solace in bringing back to life the other couple, Neo and Trinity, that had meant so much to her. Nothing comforts anxiety like a little nostalgia, says the new Morpheus in Resurrections. And it is cheering seeing Reeves and Moss back at it again. It's romantic and sentimental and sometimes touching, but it also feels somewhat superficial, and nothing in the film feels like it's of a huge consequence, as there's little to hang the film on. As there's little to hang on to, which I mean, I disagree with that, but to each his own with that particular part. But I do think that gets down to kind of like the core of it as well. And that was a 3 out of 5 rating.
It's a much smaller stakes film, and I think in today's landscape where everything's about world-ending things, it really sort of sticks out because there's no fucking blue light in the sky, there's no fucking Earth being destroyed by huge, it's...
Like he says, there's little consequences, and that to me, like, I've used this phrase before, but that flaw is a feature to me. Like, I like that the consequences are personal.
Just the fact that, will she choose to stay? Can they get her out?
Yeah.
Will this upset whatever piece they've got?
Yes, yeah.
In the general sense, so there are stakes there.
Yeah,
it's just not as black and white.
Yeah, it changes the world. It refigures the world that they're in.
Yeah, it's just not quite as straightforward as the previous films in that regard.
And just finally as well, on IMDb, the film has a 5.7 out of 10 rating, which again, I can't really complain about. It is a Marmite film. I think you're gonna love it or you're gonna hate it. That's just the way it is with this. Mm-hmm. But yeah, moving over to the box office, and he's going to go through a few of the figures that we have.
For the box office results, the budget for this film was 190 million, which is
significant.
Yeah. I mean, although just for inflation, it's actually probably mid-budget film.
Yes. I think this released, like you say, the same month as Spider-Man: No Way Home, and that's like a $300 million budget film, something silly like that.
Yeah. Right. So on its opening weekend, it made 10,749,000, and it was number 3 at the box office, behind Spider-Man: No Way Home at number 1, Sing 2 at number 2, and then what followed behind was is a very odd bunch of films, which it would be because it's
pandemic,
sort of towards the end of pandemic-ish area. So you got The Kingsman at number 4.
I got to mention about The Kingsman. That has probably the worst end, what's it called? Like after credits teaser that I've ever seen.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So like at the end of like Avengers, you get like Nick Fury saying, or the end of Iron Man, it's like, I'm assembling a team. In this one, with it being based during World War One, you have like the bad guy meeting up with somebody else, and it's like, I've assembled. It's like I'm moving on to the next bad guy I can use at my disposal. Enter Adolf Hitler.
Oh wow!
And I'm like, yeah, that's pretty fucking terrible, guys.
Oh wow! Actually, that's the thing we haven't talked about is the post-credit scene of this film. Yeah. Because again, this is all. I still have to think that this is all intentional because
100%
that post-credit scene is like it's about cat videos.
Yeah.
and it's like because we've talked at length about audience expectations for post credit sequences these days, and that just like
It's perfect.
If there's a post-credit scene that's going to piss off that
It's
kind
the
of
biggest
audience,
kind of
yeah.
fingers up, you know?
So, but yeah, going back to the box office. So at number 5, we had American Underdog. Number 6, West Side Story, Steven Spielberg's version. Number 7, A Journal for Jordan.
I have no idea.
Nope. Nice alliteration there. Number 8, Licorice Pizza. Number 9, Encanto. And number 10, 83.
No,
I don't know.
Not particularly not.
Yeah.
No, 83.
So overall, domestically, it makes 37.6 million. Internationally, 119.6 million. So that makes our overall worldwide gross of $157.2 million dollars, based on a $90 million budget plus whatever marketing they had. So this film would have lost the studio a fair amount of change.
And we are talking about a time as well. Like there were a few films that came out during this period that, like I say, all of the Warner Brothers films were going on HBO Max day and date, with exception of Dune, I think, opened a couple of days later. Whereas films like Wonder Woman 2 failed and The Matrix failed, you have to look at like films like Dune that went on to make $400 million worldwide with this model.
Yeah.
So it's like there is scope to make some money, but it was never going to make the big bucks, but I don't think it was ever destined to anyway.
No, because it's, again, legacy sequel. Yeah, it depends what the word of mouth was, and also I don't know what the actual streaming numbers were going to be like for it, because they just don't really release them.
No, they have this very weird metric of hours watched.
I don't really understand the streaming model at all. To be honest, I don't think the streaming people understand the model either, because again, it's starting to bite them on the arse. So in terms of how much you get versus subscribers money versus how much you invest in something, I don't.
But that
doesn't seem to equate to anything.
Well, the streaming model is really based on new subscribers. So if you're already an existing subscriber and you watch something, they're like, yay, but we don't care. And that's why we're getting so many things that are cancelled that have an existing fan base.
Yeah.
Like, because they're not driving brand new subscribers. But when you've got practically the whole fucking... Like with Netflix, that's part of the issue.
I think the streaming companies forgot that, like, if you're measuring it on that, new subscribers is going to hit a critical mass at some point.
Yeah, you're going to hit a ceiling.
Yeah, so you've got to find something else to bolster. You can't rely on that. And they've found that out.
Yeah, for sure.
And they're running around panicking at the moment, I think. So,
yeah.
The whole thing at Disney at the moment is just a mess because of their Disney Plus and them relying so much on it.
Yeah, I think we're going to see a shift away from Disney Plus in terms of, like, I would say specifically on a cinematic level.
Because it's completely devalued.
Yeah, the cinematic experience.
It's devalued their studio.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So, yeah, it's... we're living in interesting times, as usual.
One for the history books.
Yeah, but at the end of the day, I think Lana would be quite happy with that. Because it's like, yeah, Warner Brothers, you wanted your Matrix film. Here's your Matrix film.
Yeah,
you know, fuck you, sort of thing. You know.
Yeah.
You know, I've been paid. I'm not losing any money.
Yeah.
Hey.
I am very interested to see what she's going to do next, and more importantly, who it's going to be with, because I doubt it will be Warner Bros.
Yeah, no, definitely not.
I do think that we will see The Matrix again with this current model of Warner Bros. In place, where they seem to just have value 100% only in, like, franchise, like, no names. They've said that the things that they want to make on is Game of Thrones, Harry Potter, more Harry Potter shit coming our way. And, what's the other big franchise that Warner Bros. Has?
What, DC?
DC, yeah, that's it. Yeah, and DC. I do think The Matrix will probably fold back into that in some way, but I agree. I think it'll be a completely different form. It may be a TV show, a limited series. I reckon it'll be a new cast, new filmmakers. It'll be something completely different, and it may end up being the exact thing that this film is a criticism of.
Yeah, well, a great future for Warner Brothers.
Yeah.
That's a great long-term model,
yeah.
isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, they can only see as far as next week.
Yeah.
So, Andy, just to wrap up, would you recommend The Matrix Resurrections?
Well, like I said, it's hard. It's a hard film to recommend. It's one of those films that, if you're a particular way, it's a film to admire.
Yes,
for its pure cheek.
Because it is completely undistilled.
I think for me as well, it'll be interesting to see what the passage of time will do for this film, because at the moment it's kind of very much been mauled and then kind of brushed under the rug quite quickly.
Yeah, it was.
And it'll be interesting to see what time does to the reputation of this film.
Yeah, I agree, because time has been kind to the sequels as well. They've kind of grown, as you say, it may be people with rose-tinted glasses, I may be of the same, but they have grown a fan base of sorts over the years since. I wonder if this one will do the same, or if it's some people find it just a bit too impenetrable. But regardless, it will always, I think, remain a very interesting and worthy film in the series for me personally. And it's one that's I found more rewarding the more times that I've watched it since as well. Like, on a personal level, I love it. But yeah, I do recognise that if you're coming to this film for the action, and if you're a Matrix fan, you 100% are doing as a casual watcher of those films, you're going to find it kind of lacking, a bit lackluster in that regard.
Yeah.
And I couldn't say to you as well, if you were that kind of fan that came to this film for that level and weren't satisfied, I wouldn't be able to say, oh, you're wrong. You know, it's because it doesn't satisfy on that level. It satisfies on different levels for me that speak to me. But I completely understand why people wouldn't like it. And I, like you, I wonder, what will time do for this film? You know?
Yeah, and also, if you're invested in this world on a serious level, because it's very much got its tongue firmly placed in its cheek all the way throughout. So it's very much the antithesis of the of Reloaded and Revolutions in that way, which were very kind of self-serious.
Yes,
in a lot of ways. In ways that the original film wasn't, because it's I feel it's got more in common with the first film than the second two films, in that way, that there's a bit more wit on display than 2 and 3.
I do think, like, even there's a great line about the legacy of these films and about, like, Lana's reaction to it, because Neo is very much the Lana Wachowski surrogate in this film, and there's a moment when he's in the real world and he says that, you know, they turned my life into a video game, and it meant nothing. And we see that there is a fan base. Bug says, "Oh, it meant everything. Let me show you," and introduce him to the fans of the Matrix. But it makes me think, like, on like some of the things that, like, this is some of the things that Lana's been grappling with over the years. The idea that this world that meant everything to her, especially in terms of, like, her trans identity, stuff like, it's been hijacked by others. It's been trivialized. It became a right-wing meme as well, which is the complete opposite of what she stands for.
Yeah.
Red Pill itself is now, like, forever intrinsically linked to the men's right activist movement, which is, again, complete right-wing tough. I get, like, on some level, she's been struggling with the trivialization of this world that meant so much to her and what her identity was. And it's on those levels that I think this film will mean more to people.
Yeah.
And there's no other film, I think, that gives you that insight in terms of, like, a filmmaker's relationship to their own art. But yeah, that's where I stand on it.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's all we have on our latest episode of Popcorn Digest. But join us next time, and I will say, if this boat's rocking, don't come knocking, as we will be rocking out to The Boat That Rocks, or Pirate Radio, as it's known in America.
And does it work as a film?
Yes. Is it a film? Is it a series of moving images? But yeah, until then, I've been Agent Green.
And I've been Morpheus, but not really, yes. No, I don't know.
I've pooed myself.
Yes. I'm just imagining, like, those bots, but I'm just imagining digital poo flopping and going and turning into code on
My
impact.
God, it's kamikaze poo.
Yeah, those bots just flinging shit everywhere. Digital shit. Oh dear. Anyway.
But yeah, thanks for listening.